Thor, a huge German Shepherd dog, started sleeping in the snow near his booth. After 3 hours of observation, his master decided to find out the reason. What he found inside was completely shocking. Andres was stunned when the dog growled at him. He raised Thor from a tiny puppy, and the two have always been best friends. He went back to the booth, and the dog reacted the same way. He stood between him and the kennel, growling softly, as if warning Andres not to come any closer. The snow crunched under the man's feet as he took a step to the side. At the same moment, Thor stopped growling. "What is it, boy?" he asked softly. "What do you have there?" Thor wagged his tail and lowered his head. Then he went over to Andres to scratch him. Andres decided that the conflict was over, so he took a step aside and headed back to the booth. But Thor stood in front of him again and assumed a threatening pose. Andres realized that it was better to leave the dog, since what was in the booth was clearly important to Thor. It all started in the summer of the previous year. Andres, who was fond of carpentry, built a magnificent kennel for Thor. She had a canopy and plenty of space inside to shelter the dog from the snow, which Andres expected would start falling in early December. And so it happened that in early December, the temperature dropped and the first snow fell. Thor instinctively realized that the structure built by Andres was intended for him and in a matter of minutes turned it into his personal fortress. That evening, Andres looked through the crack between the curtains in his bedroom and saw that Thor was lying on the porch of his booth, with his head on his front paws, as if he was on guard. It had been snowing lightly for about an hour and Andres decided to check on the dog again. Thor was still on the porch of his kennel. It was freezing outside, but he didn't budge. It was really weird. The next morning, Andres went out to the booth again. Thor jumped to his feet when he saw the owner. But when Andres tried to walk to the entrance of the kennel, the dog stood in front of him again, just like yesterday. The German Shepherd then looked at his master with a plea, as if to say, "Please don't try again." As soon as Andres made a move towards the entrance to the booth, there was a quiet growl. The dog tried to prevent Andres from looking inside the kennel. The man was puzzled. He had no idea what to think about Thor's strange behavior, but then he came up with a plan. He walked quickly to the door and into the kitchen. Once inside, he took a steak from the refrigerator and began to slice it into small pieces. It was Thor's favorite treat. A dog will not be able to resist a bowl of finely chopped steak. Andres was sure of that. The only difficulty was convincing Thor to come to the kitchen. With a bowl in his hand, Andres went outside and approached the booth. As before, Thor jumped up to greet him. Andres squatted down and played with the dog, then he took the bowl from behind his back and gave Thor a sniff. The dog almost jumped with excitement. Nothing delighted her more than slices of fresh steak. But when Andres walked away with the bowl and called Thor, it looked suspicious. He usually got a treat at his booth, but now the owner wanted him to go to the kitchen to get it. Thor was confused. He looked back at the booth and whined softly. Then, apparently deciding that everything would be fine, he followed Andre into the kitchen. The dog ran in after the owner and jumped joyfully, not taking his eyes off the bowl. The first part of Andrea's plan was executed perfectly. He put the bowl on the floor in the far corner of the kitchen and petted the dog again. Thor began to eat. He didn't try to eat the whole steak at once, as most other dogs would. Instead, he seemed to enjoy every bite. And now it was time for the second phase of his plan. Andres got up slowly. He walked with his back to the door, keeping his eyes on the dog. Thor didn't pay any attention to him. The man left the kitchen and closed the door behind him. The second phase was successfully completed. He went to the kennel. Thor realized the trick as soon as the kitchen door closed. The dog opened the door and whined plaintively. When it became clear that Andres was ignoring him, he ran into the living room. There were big windows and Thor could see his booth from there. He saw Andres walking towards her and it upset him even more. He barked louder and jumped up to the window. Andres heard a noise inside the house and turned around. There was Thor, angry, looking at him. Andres didn't like that he had to lure the dog into the house and lock it there. It seemed like a betrayal of his best friend, as if it would somehow destroy the trust that had been established between them since Thor was a puppy, but he just needed to see what Thor was guarding inside his booth. Emergency situations require urgent measures, he decided, and moved on to the booth. When he got to the kennel, Thor was furious. For a few seconds, Andres was sure that Thor would break the glass and jump out through the living room window. The dog's anger seemed to grow as Andres approached the entrance to the booth. Andres knelt down and looked inside. He was completely defenseless now because his head and arms couldn't fit through the hole at the same time. If someone inside attacked him, he would be completely defenseless. But curiosity took over. As soon as his eyes adjusted to the darkness inside, he was shocked. There was a raccoon inside. Andres was confused for a moment. Normally, the raccoon should have just run away, but this one stood his ground. Just like Thor. He was protecting something. Then Andres saw it. At first he noticed only one baby raccoon, then he saw the others. In total, he counted 6 babies. Andres immediately realized that the mother raccoon needed a safe place to give birth when the early snow began. And being a gentleman, Thor sacrificed his house for her, and then began to guard her. Andres couldn't help but smile when he realized that Thor, a loyal and kind dog, had made a huge sacrifice for the mother of the raccoon and her cubs. He shared his space and became their protector, even against his master. As the days turned into weeks, Andres decided to create a cozy shelter for a family of raccoons nearby. He made a comfortable nest and made sure that they had a safe place to stay. Thor, understanding the situation, regained his kennel, but always kept a vigilant eye on them, always ready to share a shelter. It's so great to see a story about kindness between animals. Have you ever seen how animals of different species took care of each other?